Good morning, everybody. It's great to see everybody out today. So, for any of those that are new here, we welcome you all. Glad to see everybody. And welcome to come back tomorrow at 10:30 to worship with us. Really glad to have you today. For today, we got a chance to reach out, share some of the talents of the members of the congregation, help each other in the community. Today's about finance, but I want to make clear that we're not teaching prosperity doctrine. You're not going to walk out of here and just make $1 million. Woo, yeah! That's not how it works. But the one thing I can tell you, God will always give you what you need. He doesn't promise wealth, but he does promise to feed you and clothe you. And I can testify to that. My family's been through hard times, good times. We've never starved. We've never been naked. He always gives you what you need. We have a very good God. You may not have designer outfits or fancy clothes, but you don't really need those all the time. God also teaches skills we can use in this world. Everything you see in the Bible, he gives us for a reason, and he gives us something for our good. He teaches us things that we can find about not being in debt, calculating the cost of what we take on, investing wisely, carrying out honest business, and many other lessons. And that self-discipline, those lessons you find in the Bible, those actually help you. They help you actually live your life. And that's actually the basis for being financially sound. And in times like these, when eggs cost $10 a carton, it's not a bad thing. So we hope this helps you, and we hope this is something that can be useful for you. For the lineup today, we've got opening remarks by me, I'm Rex. Nice to meet you all. Opening prayer by Brother Joe. Introduction to first speaker, Brother Mike. And then our first speaker, Brother Derek. And then we'll have a 10-minute break, give you a chance to stretch your legs and get to know each other. And then we'll have Brother Derek introduce our second speaker, Brother Carlos, and Carlos Jr. And then we'll have a period of Q&A, and then Carlos Sr. will give us a closing prayer. So in all things that we do, no matter what we're doing, we always glorify God. And we always ask for his blessings and his guidance in everything that we do. And so we're going to open and close with the prayer today. And we thank you all for coming out. We thank you especially to the brothers who are presenting today for you sharing your talents and your time with us. Thank you very much. And I hope you all gain something from today. And I hope you get a chance to come out and worship with us, know more about God. And with that, I turn it over to Brother Joe for the opening prayer. Thank you.
To pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you so much for the much needed rain. And help us to know that all things come from you, all good things come from you, and all wisdom and knowledge. And Lord, we ask that you be with us today and be with all of us that are here visiting, and be with our members, Lord, as we learn an aspect of finance. And we know, Lord, that you give us everything that we need and all things that we have. You have given us to use in a way that we should use it as a good steward, to use the things that you give us. We ask, Lord, that at this time that you be with Brother Carlos Osorio Jr. as he presents a lesson on financial issues. We ask, Lord, that it'll help us to look in a better way to use what we have in a way with all the things that you give us. We thank you so much, Lord, for this time, and we ask that you be with us and bless us for all these things we ask. In Jesus' name, who gave us everything that we need, who gave himself for the church, for all these things we ask. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Brother Rex. Thank you, Brother Joe. Good morning. All right, our first speaker for this morning, he thought that he will be the host for this morning, but he is dead wrong. But before I introduce to you our first speaker of this morning, would you mind signing your name on the attendance form that's been passing around? And I'll be passing around also the evaluation form that would help our speakers And everyone, could you, if you don't mind, giving it back to me or to Brother Carlos or to Brother Derek. So our first speaker, he was a deacon, one of the deacons in this congregation, and now he's serving as one of the elders. And I've learned that he served in the army when he was in his younger years. So that's the farthest I could go in presenting our speaker, because you will know more about him as he progresses in his presentation this morning. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our first speaker, our elder brother, Derek Carvin.
One more time. All right. Woo. Thank you very much. That kind of calmed my nerves down a little bit. One of my first. Can you hear me? Everyone can hear me. I have a tendency of sometimes speaking low. My voice is a special voice, so I like it. But it speaks low sometimes. Yeah. Like Brother, well, I thank Brother Mike for the introduction I got, and the surprise I also received too. So, first of all, I would like to, thank God for the many blessings He has given me in my life. We are talking about personal finances, and I have to make this presentation personal to me. So when I look at personal finances, I look at how finances related to me in my life. So I have to tell my story. And with my story, I have to be mindful that, God has been good to me. Like Rex said, I struggled a lot in my lifetime and had ups and downs, sideways and everything else. But He was there to help me throughout my time. So it is my sincere prayer that everyone in here will gain some insight or some knowledge pertaining to finances that might help you throughout your life, that might help you see a better future and plan for your retirement or anything else that you might want to receive in life. So my goal is to give you some information that would help you or encourage the young people to look for a better way in life, to try to achieve their goals, set goals and try to achieve those goals. Now, during my presentation or during my talk, if you have any questions, raise your hand and stop me and ask me the question, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. All questions are good questions. The ones that don't get answered, or the ones that's in your mind, might be somebody else's question that they are asked. They're asked, and then you'll be free up. Oh, that prompted you to ask something else. So be mindful of that. So every question is a good question. I'll make sure I give a good answer. So I have mentioned this is about finance. So I have to talk about my experiences throughout my life with the situation I've been in. It could take a long time for me to actually get through all the information, because talking about finances and talking about my life, I could be here till tomorrow morning. I really can. I could be here. I could talk forever. We could be here. But I'll make sure I have you guys out here by 6 o'clock today. So when I was young, my father and mother taught me how to work. When I was young, we picked prunes, cut grapes, and my father taught me how to cut lines, or take care of his line, take care of our line. So with that taking care of our line, I was able to learn how to take care of other people's yards. So I had a business by cutting other people's yards in the neighborhood. So I started earning some money. So I would help my parents to buy my school clothes and do whatever else I want with my money. So my mother said, well, you're making this money as a young age, 10, 11 years old, and you need to open up a savings account. And at the the time savings account was good. That was a big thing because that's all we knew about savings account. So I opened up a savings account, so I put money in there and started buying things that I needed. So my father and I also had a hauling business. We hauled garbage or anything that needed to be hauled around the neighborhood and throughout the community. So we had 4 gas stations that we used to haul this garbage for. You know, you'd be surprised of all the things that you can collect by hauling garbage, especially at a gas station. So you have batteries. You know, batteries have copper. You can take the copper and you can take it and sell. Lead. It has lead in it, and you can take the batteries and sell it and gain money. You can get Coke bottles at the time, and you collect enough Coke bottles, you could buy yourself a Coke while you're working. Or you get metals or copper. So we used to collect all this stuff and take it to the recycle place and get some money on it. So then I had some extra money to put in my savings because I figured I'd need it later on in my life. So we did that and we poured a lot of concrete, a whole lot of concrete, doing concrete. So we had a little side business that helped me make money, like working with your hands and stuff like that. So when I got out of high school, when I graduated out of high school, I went into construction. So I was a general laborer, and I worked as a laborer for about 3.5 years. So if anybody know where Marine World is, anybody know where Marine World is? Those overpasses that you take off on 80, I helped build those. So I worked on those for completion. You know, another one of my big jobs I did was Anheuser-Busch that's in Fairfield. Everybody know where that is? I worked on that from underground all the way up to completion. So it took a couple of years to do that. So little did I know, building it or working in that construction kind of gave me a foundation of what I did in the future. Building stuff. So I was a layout designer. I designed integrated circuits. It's like computer chips, like memory chips. So I did that in my later years, but that work gave me a foundation of what I needed to do to understand what I need to do in the future. So I see God that was in the plan. God was right there. I mean, every step of my way, I could see God working because it wasn't me, you know, that was doing this stuff that I thought I could never do. So it was, I mean, really, you know, he shows up, shows out, and you don't play with him because I have my ups and downs. You know, and he beat me up a lot, a whole lot. I had to surrender. Anyway, so saying all this stuff, I worked the construction. I wanted to do something else. So some friends of mine encouraged me to move up to San Jose. So I was up in San Jose after I did the thing with the construction, but I also was a reservist. I went to the Army, and I was a watercraft operator, so I operated boats, landing crafts, you know, where tanks go off, men goes on the beach and stuff. Any type of landing craft I was able to operate. I was a boatsman, a mate. So my friends encouraged me to come up here. We lived up here. I got a job. I was working, and then disaster. Lost my job. Friends lost theirs. I become homeless. So I was on the streets for about 4 months. Ooh. Telling my story in front of people and stuff. Rough times, but I seen God was in the picture. God helped me through the challenges I had. You know, going from house to house, friend to friend, empty houses. I was there trying to stay warm, just not on the street, like walk around. I have to make light so I can go on, you know, which is the hard part. But I was going to school at the same time. I was homeless. I had halfway through the school that I was going to, that's when I became homeless. So I had to study in the dark. I had a truck. I had to study in my truck. I had to study at friends. I had to study by candlelight. I had to study by flashlight. but I was able to make it through the school and graduate. At the same time, what helped me out is my reserve status. I was used to go to the base one time a month for 2 days. So that gave me extra little money that I had with my pay. So that helped along. So after I graduated from the school, hey, it was tough, hey, but I made it. So don't never give up. Keep on working hard, keep on striving, and then your reward would be there. You know, my parents didn't even know that I was homeless, because I know if I'd have told them what they would have said, come back home. So I didn't want to hear that because I was determined to make it. I was a big boy and I was going to do it on my own. So the key is never give up, keep on striving. I promised myself that I would never get in that situation again, or I made a promise to myself. Say, oh, please, Lord, don't let me get in that situation of being homeless and without. You know, I had used up all my savings. Savings is good, but when it's gone, it's gone. You know, when it's gone, it's gone. And you don't have a job, there's no way to do that, to replenish your savings. You wouldn't have nothing to save. So after I retired, graduated from school, I went to a school called California Academy of Drafting. And I could see God played in that because my job that I had got, the person who I was taking place of, he had just finished that school. And I asked him, what did you do? And he what school was it? And he told me he was a layout designer, just finished the school. And I said, wow. So I got me interested in the school. So I signed up and went to that school, and that's how. So I see God that was right there because that was just for me, taking over somebody's place that was going to the school that got trained with something that I wanted to do. So when I graduated from that school, I happened to work at an electronic company. And at the electronic company, I learned that they had, at the time was IRAs, individual retirements account. So I started looking at that because I knew I wanted to, have a retirement in the future. So I started looking into what it meant and started looking at the stocks and stuff like that. Looking and knew what the stock market looked like. So I started to plan out my future, but I needed something now. I needed something then. So I had an opportunity to get some stock on IPO. That was initial public offering. It was a real new company, and I had opportunity to buy some. So I did accumulate a little money. I said, okay, do you take a chance with your money and go into the stock and buy the stock? And I had to weigh it out, because that's all I had. So I had to weigh that out. It's very important because I didn't want to go back where I was. So I didn't take all of it. I took some of the money, invested in the stock. And the stock went public. And I made a little bit of money, and then I put down payment on my first house. Yeah, I mean, so that's how that works. You have to do something to balance out whatever you're doing. If I wouldn't have had a little knowledge about stock and IPO, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So that's why I'm standing here today to try to encourage the young people to look at it a little bit differently, because if I would have had the knowledge I have now or then, I wouldn't have been in the position that I would have been in as far as being homeless and without any money or whatever. So, like I said, that's why I'm encouraging the young people to look at it a little bit different so they can, achieve their goals. Says if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and it's not easy. I can't stand up and say it's easy. It's a tough business, it's a tough market, but you have to have internal guts and you have to have a drive to do it. So to invest in. So that gets me to the point of saying that I've been retired for almost 8 years. I retired as a layout engineer. I worked on computer chips, designed chips. And like I said, my foundation was in what was planted in my mind years ago, building stuff. So I like building things. I like to see it being designed and built. So, that's one of my talents I have for looking at things and building it. On our flyer, it has a scripture that's taken from Luke chapter 14, verse 28. And it says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. When you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it, I'll make 3 points out of this passage right here, and it's going to pertain to finances. One of them, okay, that's my passage that I'm supposed to read. Boom. Okay, 3 points. Okay, count the cost. This verse encourages careful evaluation of resources, time, efforts, and the need to achieve goals. It highlights the importance of foresight and making informed decisions to make your commitment possible so you don't fail. Number 2 is responsibility and commitment. Undertaking a project without proper planning may lead to incomplete results or wasted resources. This passage teaches the value of being responsible and committed to a task until completion. So once a task has just begun, never leave it until it's done. If the labor great or small, do it well or not at all. So you have to put your all into the task that's beforehand. Just as a person wouldn't start building a building or a tower without considering what it takes to build that tower. I missed one. Okay, I have to go back. I'm getting better at this as I go along. So number 3 application is to life and faith. In a broader sense, this verse can be applied to life decisions, such as personal goals, career paths, or spiritual commitment. It serves as a reminder to wait to sacrifices and challenges before committing to something significant. And in this passage, it also tells his followers that being a disciple of Jesus is not always easy. You have to count the cost in order to be a disciple of Jesus. Very important. So you have to put him above family, friends, and even yourself at times. It's very important. That's a total commitment to who he is. Just like a person wouldn't start building a building or a tower without ensuring that they can afford to build it, Jesus urged his followers to access where they are ready to bear the cross of their own. So you look at practical application. Oops, wrong one. I had another one. Okay, practical application and wisdom in decision making. Beyond the spiritual meaning of that passage, this passage also emphasized the general principle of planning wisely, whether it's managing finances, starting a project, pursuing personal goals, or planning for your retirement. Taking time to assess the resources and challenges and potential outcomes is critical to your completion and to your success. The question is, supposing you want to buy a cup of Starbucks coffee, when you count the cost. Suppose you want to buy a car, you will count the cost and see if you have enough money to buy the car. If you want to buy a house, you will count the cost and see if you had enough money to afford the house. Everybody would say yes. Everybody would say yes to that answer. So it's important to count the cost so you can see if you can retire in the future or retire now. You have to count the cost if you have enough money to retire. So that's where planning comes in for retirement now or retirement in the future. Another passage in the Bible that we can use will be taken from Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 to 30. And this is the parable of the talents. Now, a talent is a weight. It's a weight of money, gold or silver, but it's a lot of money. It's a big weight. 1 talent would be worth probably 20 years of someone working hard. So it's a lot of money. So 1 talent is a lot of money. So, and it's probably even more than that. But it says that this story tells the story of a master going on a journey and entrusts his servants with different amounts of money. And he gave it to them according to their ability. So you use what you got according to your ability, and you work on that to strengthen up your character, strengthen up your relationship, strengthen up your goals by planning and strengthening up yourself. So he gave these servants money. The first servant he gave 5 talents. The second one he gave 2 talents. The third one he gave 1 talent according to his ability. When the master returned and wanted to take account of the servants, the first servant that had 5 talents, he invested and he showed the master here's 5 more talents. The second servant had 2 talents, he had invested and he had 2 more talents. He said, the master said, well, you 2 servants have been good and faithful. I'm going to give you responsible for more things. So responsibility. The third servant, what he did, he went and buried his master's money in the ground. And the master said, you could at least put it in the bank and could have got interest on it. You called him a lazy, low-down servant. You could have put it in the bank and I could have got some interest off the money. You know, I'm going to take what you have and give it to the one that has the 10 talents. Because it's responsibility. All right. So as we look at those, we can see that taking responsibility of your actions and your decisions, you have consequences with those things. It could be favorable or not. But the wise thing is to do something and not nothing and go bear it in the hole. So investing wisely, just as the servant in the parable multiplied his master's money, we're encouraged to use financial resources effectively. This might mean investing in stock, in property, in business, or simply budgeting for savings. So our finances can grow and support our family needs. That's one of the things that we can do. I am sure that everybody in here would like to be financially independent. Hello? Hello? Yeah? This is yes. This is no. Everybody would like to. I'm sure you would be, you know. So whether it's our time, skills, or finance, or relationship, we are called to do what we have with what we have wisely. So we also have to be generous and purpose-driven people. Generous, purpose-driven people. Wealth isn't meant to be hoarded or buried like the person's buried in the ground. It's supposed to have a meaningful and a purpose to it. This could involve giving to charity, supporting community projects, funding opportunities that align with your goals. Generosity can reflect faithfulness and financial stewardship. It's important to overcome fear. False evidence appear real. Like the servant who buried the talent out of fear, it's easy to avoid financial risks. However, doing nothing leads to stagnation. You won't get anything out of it. So you need to educate yourself about financial planning and take a calculated risk to build your wealth and create opportunities for yourself and others. I think a lot of people out here, a lot of you might think about investing in the stock. A lot of people have questions about that. Some people don't because they're scared they might lose their money. A lot of things is because they don't know enough about the market to invest in it. So this is one of the purposes why we're giving a seminar so we can get enlightened on how the market works, what you can do to make your plans for the future. Speak up. I thought I was speaking up. I have to give some thanks to my wife. She said, speak up. Thank you, Kathy. My backbone, that's Kathy. Yeah, my backbone. Thank you, I appreciate it. Can you hear me now? Better? Somebody say something. I've been up here talking, you couldn't hear me? You couldn't, can you hear me now? I'm up here talking to everybody, doing like this and nobody here. Oh, okay. All right, I'm just messing with you now. Okay, you can hear me now. All right, I'm just funny with myself. Okay. Where was I was talking about people are scared to invest money in different things, but people will invest in property and stuff. So, people sometimes don't understand the stock market, so educating yourself, it's what is the goal is. It takes a long time. I mean, times changes, the market changes. It's rough, it's tough, it's brutal at times, but they always have safety nets that you can put in place, and you can average out certain things. Talk about that a little bit later, but you have different things that help you along the way. You heard the saying, scared money makes no money. Scared money makes no money. So we're here to help you understand some of the terminology of the stock market so you can make wise decisions and building your nest egg and wealth for yourself and for your family. The stock market is a marketplace where shares of public traded companies are bought and sold. It serves as a platform for companies to raise capital by issuing stocks and for investors to buy ownership in those companies. So when you purchase stock, you actually own a piece of the company. If you like the iPhone with Apple, well, then you own a piece of Apple. If you like, Tesla, you invest in Tesla, you own a little piece of Tesla. So that's very important that you know. But you can watch your investment grow as the company grows. Okay, that's another story. I mean, it's a lot more to that, but that's a basic idea of investing in that. But the stock market is a vital part of the global economics. It also enables businesses to grow and provide individuals with opportunity to invest in and build wealth. There's 5 reasons to be able to invest in that you might want to invest in the stock market. Number 1, wealth and building capital appreciation. Stocks have historically provided higher long-term returns compared to other investments like bonds or savings accounts. Savings account includes. Investors buy stock and hope their value will increase over time, allowing them to sell at a profit. Number 2, some stocks, particularly those of established companies, pay dividends. This quarterly distribution of dividends from the company's profit can provide a source of passive income. You get this income, you could have it invested back into the stock, or you can have some money in your pocket quarterly by having the right company that offers dividends. So you could be at home and you get a dividend check because you invest in a proper company, sharing in the profits. Ownership in the company, we talked about that. Purchasing stocks gives investors opportunity to own part of that company. Shares can have a significant say in the decision making for that company by voting. If you have certain common stocks, you can vote on what you like about the company, what you don't, but we know. Number 4, diversification. Stocks offer an opportunity to diversify in an investment portfolio. Diversification is very important and very key to investing. Don't put all your money in one basket. Go across the board. If you have one basket, that basket break, you'll be broke. So don't put it all in one place. Don't roll the dice, as they say, and put it all in one place. Hope it is that. Now remember, some stocks have poor performance, but some of them rebound and do everything that they do. So number 5, which is important, very important. All of it's important, but this potential hedge against inflation. Over time, stock investments often outpace inflation, preserving the potential increase purchasing power. While inflation decreases the value of money, well-performed stocks help grow wealth. Important, right? Right, it really does. The stock market consists of several key components that facilitate buying and selling of the security. It's a lot more I could talk about, but it's a lot of stuff here. So I'm just going to cut it real short and just give you an overview of what it is. So one of them is the stock exchange. We have to know what these terminology is in order to do something with it. A lot of people, we hear it, but we don't formulate what it says. And it draws us off. So the stock exchange is a platform where stocks and other securities are traded, such as the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ exchange. You have the London Exchange, the London and Tokyo Exchange. So number two, securities. Stocks, or we call equities, represent ownerships in the company. You have mutual funds, and what mutual funds are is a collection of stocks. It's a pool of stocks that's collected to make up a mutual fund. Get in more about that later. Just can't talk about it. You have bonds and stocks, and you have other stuff. You have ETFs. You know, everybody know about 401ks. You have annuities. You have different things of that nature. The indicators or the benchmarks are the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which has 30 companies in that. 30 major companies make up the Dow Jones. The NASDAQ composite, you heard of a lot of these names, it's tech heavy. It has a lot of tech companies. Where do we live at? What city we live in? San Jose is called what? What do they make in the Silicon Valley? Tech stuff. Is it opportunity out here? Is it companies that grow out here? Yes. They spring up all the time. So that's important. The tech-heavy NASDAQ composite. It's all over the world. We have the S&P 500. It's 500 large U.S. companies. Number four, we have words like retail traders. That's individual buying and selling stocks. We have institutional investors, large entities like mutual funds, 401k, hedge funds, and pension funds. They have words like brokerage firms. You know, brokers is companies that it's a platform to buy and sell stock on, such as Charles Schwab, Fidelity, and E-Trade, and all those other folks. But then they have regulatory bodies, so regulatory bodies that help the organization stay in place so it won't be fraudulent deals or anything like that, which would be the SEC, the Security Exchange, keep the regulatory, the financial institutions. Talk about the IPO. IPO is where companies they issue stock for the company, and then investors can buy them on opening or any day afterwards. You usually have investors in there. They have the derivative market. They have all kinds of markets. There's too much to even mention right now, but you get a glimpse of what we're saying. Maybe in the future, we can talk more about it and get more in depth in it, because it's a lot more involved than I just skimmed the surface. But hopefully you got the information I wanted you to get about being open to making decisions, wise decisions. But there's a lot of things that we can learn about the stock market. It takes time, a whole lot of time, but it helps your dreams come true. And it's worth living. I mean, it's worth learning. So this time you have any questions for me? I can answer now or later. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll introduce you to our next speaker. Any questions? Yeah. How you pick the stocks? That's another lesson in itself. That's a very interesting one. I could talk about that a simple way. I could say a simple way to pitch stuff. The Dow Jones has 30 companies and it make up to 30 companies. A lot of them are great companies. They have top 10. You pick top 10 out of the top 10, but you have to chart and make sure that you follow them carefully. You know, the NASDAQ going to have a top 10. You look at the top 10 of NASDAQ, pick one of those. You have the S&P 500, pick the top S&P 500. Or, I'm going to answer a lot of questions in one shot. Or if you wanted to make an index fund, you just pick the whole index fund of the Dow Jones, or the whole index fund of the S&P 500, or the whole index fund of the S&P 500. That's the way you can do it one way. I like this method right here. It's called nuts, the picks and shovels. Have anybody heard of that? Picks and shovels. I know you heard me talk. Picks and shovels. Okay, here's what picks and shovels are. Back earlier in the 1800s, well, when there was gold rush, right? Everybody was rushing out to buy gold, to stake their land in gold, try to find gold, pan for gold, dig for gold. They had all these people rushing out in California. Everybody didn't find gold, but everybody needed picks and shovels. They needed pans. They needed building material, right? They needed places to stay, right? So you get the picture how investing in certain picks and shovels in hotels, building up the cities, clothes for the miners, or picks and shovels, and just looking at it this way. A car company like Ford, we use Tesla. I like the Tesla. Tesla is made up of, it's a car, right? It has electronics, it has wheels, it has glass in it, it has seats, everything in there that some company made to make that car, picks and shovels. But you got the car, you got the end result. Everybody can afford it now, but everybody can put into the company. What is Tesla stock doing now? Going crazy. So the picks and shovels help you make a decision by finding some beauty products. So a lot of, Kathy had told me about some beauty products and about some other stocks that I invested in and stuff and did okay with it. So you have beauty products, makeup, eyeshadows, and lipstick and all that stuff. So you invest in the company that has the picks and shovels. That makes sense to you? Yes? Okay, so I answered that away. Any other questions? Think of some more, I'll be back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Testing, testing. Let me see if testing. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes? This is yes. That is not- There you go. All right, okay. All right now. For okay. For our second part of our seminar, it is a pleasure and an honor to introduce our next speaker. Been knowing him since he probably was about 4 or 5 years old. His parents are great parents, raised a great young man. I'm proud of him. I know they're proud of him. They put the love of the Lord in him, and you could show in his life. So I really appreciate our next speaker, and I love what he's doing, trying to get the word out to young people, to old people, anyone that would listen, as far as helping them out with their financial planning. So this young man has a BS in Business Administration, an MS in Finance, both from the University of California, Riverside. He has a Series 6 license and a Series 7 license. His hobbies are, that's he's capable of helping you out with your finances, make it, these qualifications are a big deal for him. His hobbies are chess, movies, and soccer. He's a soccer player, loves soccer. And he's also a representative for Northwestern Financial Mutual. I'd like to welcome Brother Carlos Osorio Jr. Let's hear it again for him.
Is this thing on? Can you guys hear me? Hi guys. It's nice to see you all out there. Thank you, Brother Derek, for that very kind introduction. This is actually my first seminar, so I appreciate you all coming out and taking the time out of your weekend to essentially get some good information. My hope is that after today's session, you feel inspired, fired up, and leave more knowledgeable than you came. I've never been one to really enjoy lectures. I've sat through 3-hour lectures in college and it's not fun. So if you have any questions, please ask along the way. I know sometimes there's some questions that come up and we forget them at the end. So I want to make this as interactive as possible, and go ahead and interrupt whenever there's any questions that arise. So when it comes to financial planning, the approach that my team and I take here at Northwestern Mutual is going to be very specific to the person that we're in front of. So we take a very holistic, very comprehensive approach when it comes to financial planning, and it comes down to the question, what do you want for your future, right? So essentially, what would you like life to look like for you 5, 10, 25 years down the road, right? So we'll spend a lot of time whenever we meet with clients asking them questions along the lines of, hey, what are your goals, right? What would you like to achieve? These goals can be personal, professional, or financial, right? We don't believe that financial planning is essentially like a one-size-fits-all. So what works for Brother Derek might not work for my parents, right? What works for me might not work for my siblings. So depending on the things that you want to achieve, that'll really determine the way the conversation goes. So when it comes to financial planning, there's going to be four main areas that my team and I focus on. The four main areas are going to be cash flow management, risk management, wealth management, and debt management. We'll go into all four of these different areas in a little bit more detail. So let's go ahead and start with cash flow management. When it comes to cash flow management, we like to think as a team that each dollar in your financial plan should have a job description, right? What we mean by that is we need to know where each dollar is going and the purpose it serves in your plan. So what we mean by that is, hey, are these dollars going into the future in terms of, are we using them to save, right? And potentially use them for investments, whatever that may be, a couple years down the road? Are we going to use them today in the present, whether it's to take care of bills or maintain our lifestyle, right? So enjoyment. And then potentially, are these going towards the past to take care of debt? So in terms of cash flow management, my team and I use a very good general rule of thumb, which we call the 20-60-20 rule, right? So the 20-60-20 rule is a rule that indicates 20% of your dollars should be going towards your savings and investing, right? 60% should go towards essential expenses, so your bills, so think of housing, food, insurance, loan debt, whatever it may be. And then that last 20% is what we set aside for lifestyle. We consider this your fun money, right? Whatever it is that you want to spend on, that's where that 20% goes. Now, it's not uncommon to hear, especially when we meet with clients for the first time, for them to say, Carlos, you know what, living here in the Bay Area, it really feels like my essential expenses are taking up more than 60% of my budget, right? Or I'm pretty sure I'm spending more than 20% on fun money, right? Or what we hear sometimes, it's, I have no idea where my money's going, right? It's kind of like I get paid, I take care of all my bills, and then all of a sudden I feel like I don't have anything else. So this is really one of the areas of opportunity that my team and I provide a lot of value to our clients in terms of, hey, making sure that we all can understand where our dollars are going, the purpose that they serve in your plan, and just really building more confidence in your budget, right? Now, understanding your budget, kind of going off of what Brother Derek was saying earlier, allows you to begin to think and plan about bigger ticket items, right? So what causes matter to you, right? Or where would you like to make a difference? I know he mentioned potentially like giving back, right? Volunteering, things of that sort. So I know it's always difficult to answer such a broad question. So I thought I'd take some time during the presentation to share the causes that matter to me and where I would like to make a difference. So when it comes to the causes that matter to me and how I would like to impact not only my family, but future generations, I have always been someone that's very forward thinking. I am first generation in my family. I'm very proud to say that everything that I've accomplished has been due to the support that has been provided by my parents. I was the first person in my family to go to college, first person to get 2 degrees. So I was the firstborn, right? So as you can imagine, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. But I felt like it's molded me into the individual that I am today. So for me, what matters the most is essentially legacy planning, right? So being able to provide for my parents, give back to them, provide for my siblings, provide for future children, if I'm blessed to have any, right? And make sure that they're well taken care of and that they can do everything that they want to do, right? So are there any brave volunteers that would want to share essentially like causes that matter to them or areas that they would like to make a difference? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay. I thought you were volunteering. No, if not, it's okay. We'll move on. So, in terms of the second area of financial planning, we covered cash flow management. The second one will be risk management. So, when it comes to risk management, I'm going to be completely transparent with you guys and say that this is arguably one of the least covered or least talked about areas. The reason for that is because it's uncomfortable, right? Not very many individuals like spending time thinking about what plans they would have in place in the event that tragedy were to strike, right? Or misfortune were to occur. However, I would be remiss to not say that if you are ever meeting with a financial professional, right, and they don't address any areas of risk management, you should bring that up. Like, you deserve to have that as a part of your plan. Because at the end of the day, you can plan, invest, do all these nice and shiny things, but if the risk management side of your plan is not addressed, the entire plan will collapse upon itself, right? So think of this area as essentially the foundation for your house. When you have guests over, you'll probably say, hey, look at this nice TV I have, look at my chandelier, look at my man cave, whatever it is, right? You're probably not gonna go up to them and say, look at this firm foundation that my house is built on, right? However, you wouldn't have all of these nice, luxurious things if that foundation wasn't firm. So when it comes to protecting your income, family, and your assets, a question that I had for you all this morning was, in the event that we were ever unable to earn an income due to a sickness or injury, do we all have strategies in place to essentially replace the dollars that we would no longer be earning? Most of the times what I'll hear is, no, Carlos, I don't have a strategy in place, right? Or I haven't even thought of that, right? So this next slide is not necessarily to alarm you, but it's more of like, hey, these things are real, right? These things happen, so we want to make sure that anything that's not in our control, we plan for. So when it comes to earning an income, in individuals, 1 out of 4, right, will be out of work due to sickness, injury, or disability at some point in their career, right? For men, it's about 2.2 years. For women, it's about 3.7, right? So your ability to earn an income is what my team and I would say is arguably your most valuable asset, right? You can have your car, you can have your TV, your house, but at the end of the day, what funds all of those different action items are going to be your income, right? So how many of you were aware that you had what's called disability income insurance through your employer? Show of hands. Okay. So when it comes to disability income insurance, think of this as essentially a way of replacing your income in the event that you were ever to get hurt, sick, injured, and you cannot perform your job duties. Most of the times, the rates are about 60%, right? So let's do some quick math. Let's say you're earning $100,000 a year, right? When you're perfectly fine, you go to work every day, whatever that occupation is, your employer pays you 100% of your salary. In the event that you were to get hurt, sick, injured, and you're out for a prolonged period of time, your employer will say, hey, so-and-so, I'm gonna have to cut your paycheck and pay you 60% or $60,000. However, since this is an employer-sponsored plan, it is fully taxable. So that $60,000 is looking a little bit closer to $45,000, $50,000. So taking a step back, what that really means is you'll go from earning 100% of your income to now 50% of that. Now, as I mentioned before, especially in the state, in the area that we live in, it's already difficult to plan, save, and invest off of 100% of your income. So you can imagine how much more difficult it would be to do all three of those things off of 50% of your income, right? It's very likely that you might have to give up one of them, if not all three, right? And as Brother Derek mentioned earlier, savings are great, but when they're gone, they're gone, right? So in terms of the value that we provide for our clients is helping them design different plans to help protect their most valuable asset, which is their ability to earn an income through what we would call private supplemental disability income plans, right? Now, depending on the individual that we're in front of, certain employers will offer them certain amounts, right? So we'll design it and tailor it specifically to them. Now, second area of risk management is going to be the life insurance piece, right? So another area that's just as important, and in terms of protecting your loved ones, is it really poses the question of, hey, what if you weren't there to financially support your family, right? What would you like life to look like for them, right? My team and I say there's no right or wrong amount when it comes to life insurance. We simply say, what would you want to have in the event that something were to happen, right? So we use an acronym, forgive me, it's DIE, right? So it's D is debt. So any debt that you have, we want to make sure is included in that life insurance calculation. I would be income replacement, right? So depending on how many years you want your income to be replaced for, that's how we'll get to that number. Most of the times, a good example is, hey, if a family has children, let's say the children are 1 and 4, they might say, hey, Carlos, I want to replace my income until both of my children are at least 18 years of age, or at least 22 years of age, right? So I want to make sure that they're funded to and through college. And then that last letter E is going to be expenses, any remaining expenses. So that'll be an emergency fund, a funeral expense, right? And a readjustment fund. What is meant by the readjustment fund is, let's say partner, spouse, whoever it is, passes away on Friday. We want to make sure that you don't have to go back to work that following Monday, right? We don't know how individuals will react to tragedy. I could see myself burying myself in work, and I can also see myself never wanting to work again, right? So providing options and flexibility is really what is at the root of the type of planning that we do, especially when it comes to risk management. Now, very similar to disability income insurance, it's very likely that as full-time employees, you all have some sort of coverage through work. Typically, standard rates are anywhere between 1 to 3x your salary, right? Now, there's going to be two main types of life insurance. You'll have term, and you'll have something that's called cash value life insurance. It's also referred to as permanent life insurance, right? Term life insurance is going to be the most cost-effective way to transfer risk, right? Cash value life insurance is going to be seen as a living asset on your balance sheet, which means it's going to have a specific set of skills that will help you both on the wealth and risk management side of your plan. So when it comes to group coverage or coverage you have to work, it's going to fall in the term life insurance category, right? Because as I'm sure you're all familiar with, when you leave that employer, you lose those benefits, right? So if you have, let's go back to the individual we were talking about earlier, the one who has 100,000 of a salary, 3x would be 300,000. So he would have 300,000 at work, right? Leaves that employer, 300,000 of life insurance no longer exists. So we know, especially here in the Bay Area, it's very likely that layoffs occur, right? Management is restructuring, whatever they want to call it. So we want to make sure that we have control of our benefits through private individual plans. So when it comes to the difference between private plans and group coverage, very similar to what I was saying earlier, group coverage is taxable, right? So of that 300,000 this individual has, the first 50,000 of coverage is tax-free. The other 250,000 would be reported as ordinary income for the beneficiary. So living in the state of California, not only are we subject to Uncle Sam, we have to deal with Aunt California, right? So you can imagine the taxes are going to be very heavy in terms of what you would have to pay if you add another $250,000 to your salary that year. Whereas individual plans serve as essentially a tax-free death benefit that's provided to the beneficiary. So depending on the amount, depending on your objectives, that'll determine the way we would design your plan for you. But our team, our main priority is making sure that you understand the different types that there are, the purpose that they serve in your plan, and essentially that we have the quote unquote right amount of coverage for you. So wealth management, this is what everyone thinks of when they hear of financial planning. And this is essentially what Brother Derek was talking about earlier, right? With your investments, how you can grow your money. So when it comes to wealth management, this is going to be the fun side of financial planning, right? Risk management is going to be uncomfortable. However, it's super important, right? It's going to be your foundation. Wealth management is what comes after you've established that solid foundation, right? So wealth management, when it comes to your savings and investing, 20% of that, if we go back to the 20-60-20 rule, is essentially what you should be saving or investing on a monthly basis, right? I grew up in a Latino household, and all I ever heard was, Carlos, you need to save money, right? I would look at my mom and my dad and be like, well, for what? You know, I'm like 10 years old, 11 years old. Like, what am I saving money for? Where should I save my money? What can I do with my money, right? So when it comes to this 20%, again, there's going to be 4 different time horizons you can allocate your dollars, right? Let's call them 4 different segments of wealth. You'll have dollars in the short term, midterm, long term, and then retirement. So short-term dollars, think of cash, right? So your checkings accounts, your savings accounts, money market, CDs, whatever that may be, right? Short-term dollars are typically going to be very safe and also very liquid. Midterm dollars are going to be what Brother Derek was talking about earlier, right? So your investments, so your stocks, your bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever it may be. One thing you need to remember is that the short-term and the midterm buckets, these are fully taxable, right? So although they provide you with liquidity and some safety, these dollars are going to be subject to interest gains or capital gains, right? Depending on your holding period. So one thing we want to be mindful of is as good as it is to have dollars that are easily accessible, you also don't want to be paying Uncle Sam more than you have to, right? We want to make sure that we have some dollars in our pocket that we can either spend and use for whatever it is that we want. Now, when it comes to the other side, long-term and retirement buckets, the long-term vehicle is going to be the most common one. The first one is going to be the most common, and that's real estate or property, right? So a condo, a house, an apartment, any sort of real estate that you have serves as a long-term asset, right? The second one is one thing I mentioned earlier, and that's going to be your cash value life insurance, right? So as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a living asset on your balance sheet that addresses both risk and wealth management planning. Risk in the sense that it is under a life insurance chassis, right? Or it's a life insurance vehicle. So it'll have that death benefit that comes with it, but it also has a tax-free savings account that grows away from the market, right? And once it goes up in value, it cannot lose its value, right? Now, it does have more liquidity than the vehicles in the retirement bucket, but less liquidity than your cash, right? Cash is going to be the most easily accessible. So just to recap, in the long term, we'll have real estate and cash value life insurance, right? So depending on what your primary objectives are, that'll determine what areas we would kind of approach in terms of the different types of way we can structure that for you. Now, the last one would be retirement. So retirement, as I'm sure you all are familiar with, you'll have your 401k, your Roth 401k, your IRA, your Roth IRA, and annuities fall into this category as well, right? So when it comes to the long term and when it comes to retirement, these vehicles are what we would call tax advantaged, right? Because the 401k, you're able to save some money on taxes today. You pay them upon distribution, right? With your Roth vehicles and the cash value life insurance, those are going to be everyone's favorite, the tax exempt vehicles, right? The dollars that grow on a tax-free basis that provide you with essentially the true worth of those vehicles, right? Now, I want to take a step back and say, when it comes to all four of these time horizons, think of them as your financial toolbox, right? I'm not saying that one of these categories is better than the other. As Brother Derek was mentioning earlier, when it comes to finance, it's all about diversification. It's all about not putting your eggs in one basket, right? Because as good as tax-free vehicles are, right, you don't want to have all your money in a Roth because it's locked up until the age of 60. And if something happens today, you wouldn't be able to access that penalty-free, right? You also don't want to have everything in a short-term vehicle in terms of cash, right? Because you're going to miss out on time value of money, right? It's very likely that you would lose purchasing power due to essentially not keeping up with the pace of inflation. So all four of these different time segments are going to be tools in your financial toolbox that you can leverage. And again, we would design that specifically for you. So when it comes to savings, oh yeah, go ahead.
How much to put in savings versus how much to invest, or when you should start investing. I think you may be covering it right now, so.
When you should start investing? Yesterday.
It's like ratio, savings versus investment.
So when it comes to the 20%, my team and I base our financial planning off of proven methodologies and academic research. So there was a study conducted by a famous accounting firm, Ernst & Young, and they said that this 20%, the way it should be split up is 14% of that should be aggressive dollars. So what is meant by aggressive is anything that's invested, right? So that'll be your stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, whatever that may be. That other 6% is what you would call your safe dollars. So this is where you would allocate money towards cash value life insurance, your emergency fund, et cetera, CDs, whatever it may be, wherever you keep that emergency fund. So that's kind of like the simplified way of breaking up that 20%. 14% aggressive, 6% you want safe. You want more going towards the aggressive because, as we mentioned, typically your investments will outpace the rate of inflation and you won't lose purchasing power. Yeah. So when it comes to savings in an emergency fund, how many of you have an emergency fund? Awesome. When it comes to an emergency fund, there's a stat that came up and it was a bit alarming, right? Because it says that 32% of all Americans wouldn't be able to cover an unexpected expense of $400, right? Without using a credit card or borrowing money, right? So when you think about this, this can put you in a very difficult situation in the future, especially due to the high interest rates that are tied to credit cards, right? So one thing that my team and I always say is, we don't want our clients to take steps backwards. We want them to continue moving forward. So when it comes to your emergency fund, typically what we will say is you want to allocate anywhere between 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses in an emergency fund, right? Depending on your situation in life, for younger professionals, you could get away with three months of your fixed expenses, right? For a family, 6 months of your fixed expenses is typically what we recommend. Now, where you keep this emergency fund is just as important, right? So your emergency fund should be kept in something very safe, right? And something that you can access at any point in time. So the two examples I'll give you would probably be a high yield savings account or a money market account. So these accounts are going to be very safe, and also they're going to provide you with a higher rate of return on interest, right? So typically we bank with Wells Fargo, and they'll give me like pennies or cents on the dollars that I have in there, right, in the savings account, which is very inefficient. There are online platforms like Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank, SoFi Bank, Wealthfront that will offer you anywhere between 3.5% to 4.5% of interest, right? So when you think about it, getting 3.5% to 4.5% off of, let's say, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, whatever 6 months of fixed expenses is for you, can go a long way in the long run, right? So we want to make sure we're being as efficient with our dollars there and making sure that our money is working hard for us just as hard as we work for it, right? When it comes to investing, Rex, you asked a really good question earlier in terms of, hey, how do I go about picking these stocks, or how do I go about picking these investments? So when it comes to picking investments, it depends on your goals, right? What do you want this money to do for you? It depends on your time horizon, and it depends on your tolerance for risk, right? So when it comes to these different things, we have some clients who will say, Carlos, I don't care if my investment account earns 50% one day and the next day it loses 45%, right? Because I know that I'm not touching this money for a long time. I'll have other clients who will say, Carlos, if my money goes down 5%, I'm gonna lose it and we're gonna have to meet, right? So that's a very oversimplified example of risk tolerance, right? So how much are you willing to stomach? But we also have to remember that there's a difference between risk tolerance and risk capacity, right? So risk tolerance is essentially your innate ability to stomach what's going on in the market or how the market fluctuates. Risk capacity is essentially how much time you have to stomach that, right? So for an individual, I'm gonna use myself and then my parents as an example, right? So my dad really loves going on roller coasters, right? So we can say that he has a really high risk tolerance. My mom, not too far off in age, is the exact opposite. She refuses to go on any roller coasters with us and will actually say, hey, I'm gonna stay down here and take some pictures, take some videos of you guys, right? So although their risk capacity may be the same, right, their risk tolerance is very different. So now using myself and my dad as the example, again, we both, I would say, have very similar risk tolerances, but I have a larger risk capacity in the sense that I would be able to rebound, right, and bounce back and kind of recover from any mishaps that may occur, especially when it comes to investments, due to my time horizon. So although we might have the same risk tolerance, we probably wouldn't have the same investment strategy, right? Because there would be a higher need of safe dollars in terms of his age, in terms of what he wants those dollars to do for him. So that's really how we would go about designing your specific investment strategy and then going about selecting your either securities, whatever it may be. So I'm sure you've all heard the old saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today, right? So Brother Derek and I were joking about this yesterday. We were saying it's never too late to start investing, but it's better to start earlier, right? And this page really highlights the importance of the value of starting earlier, right? So essentially, think of starting earlier as buying dollars at a discount, right? When you're younger, you have more time to essentially invest a smaller amount so that it can grow, right? As you get older, as you get closer to your goals, you would have to put more in there to reach the same amount or earn the same amount as somebody who's starting years in advance, right? So one thing I tell my clients is let's use the hindsight of our clients in retirement as our foresight, right? Because I've never met with a client who has told me, Carlos, I wish I started saving later, right? I've met with so many people and not a single one of them has ever said, yeah, you know what, I probably should have started 20 years later, right? It's always the opposite. So the sooner you start, the harder your money can work for you. So debt management. So debt management will have a lot to do in terms of making sure that we're optimizing our dollars so that they can best serve their purpose in our financial plan. So when it comes to debt management, I want to make a point to distinguish between good debt and bad debt, right? So good examples of good debt would be like student loans, mortgage, right? Anything like that, right? Those are going to be debts that have put you in a better, or will put you in a better situation in the future, right? Your student loans, perfect example would be like a physician, right? We all know physicians, doctors, they take on a lot of student loans, but as they begin working working in their careers, they earn that money to kind of pay that off, right? And essentially, without that debt, they wouldn't be able to exercise their career, right? Examples of bad debt would be credit cards, right? Credit cards are the kind of the primary example when it comes to bad debt. And the reason I say that is because they come with high interest rates, right? So when it comes to credit card debt, what I typically recommend is making sure that we have a strategy in place so that we know how soon we need to pay these dollars off so that we're not losing dollars in our financial plan due to interest, right? Because most of the times it's going to be anywhere between 20 to 30% in terms of what you're paying on it on the credit card interest rates, right? So 20 to 30%, you're probably not going to make that rate of return in your investments, right? We're lucky if we get anywhere between 10 to 15% on a good year, right? So if we have credit card debt, it's going to eat at a lot of the gains that we're having in our financial plan. So we want to make sure that there's a strategy in place to knock that out. When it comes to student loan debt, we partner with a team that's called GradFin, right? So any individuals that have student loan debt, we introduce them to GradFin, and they really focus on loan forgiveness, loan consolidation, making sure that our clients are aware of the steps that they can take to map out their debt management strategy in that area, right? So that consultation usually is usually anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes to kind of introduce you to them and kind of see what your situation is and how they can best help you and, again, tailor the plan to your preferences. Now, mortgage debt, right? So mortgage is another good example of good debt. And when it comes to mortgage debt, there's a couple options that you may have, and that will be refinancing, right? Potentially getting you the option to lower your interest rate, lower your payments, or you could also take the strategy of accelerating payments, right? By paying a little bit extra on the principal, right? So this may affect tax deductions, but either way, when it comes to debt management, we want to make sure that regardless of whether it's good or bad debt, we understand the strategy that is behind each of these approaches so that, again, our cash flow can continue to work in the way we want it to, right? So just to recap, the 4 areas we have are cash flow management, risk management, wealth management, and debt management. So now that we've kind of set the stage, set the foundation, once we get a good understanding of how we can leverage all 4 of these different areas, the unique tools and skill sets that come with each of these different areas, we can kind of climb to that summit, which is essentially retirement, right? And as I'm sure you're already familiar with, what got you to the top of the mountain isn't what's going to help you get down the mountain, right? There's a different skill set that is required to climb the mountain than what it is to essentially have to descend that mountain, right? I've never been to Mount Everest, although I would love to, but I know that one of the biggest things that is of a concern for individuals is not the ascent, right? It's the descent. So the skills that got you to the top of that mountain aren't going to be the same skills that help you get down that mountain, which is essentially retirement, right? So we'll help you when it comes to wealth management. We'll help you throughout the accumulation phase and also the distribution phase, right? So making sure that we have strategies in place to make sure that all the assets that we've built up are going to work in the way we want them to once we've reached retirement, right? And I know retirement is something that's new for everyone because nobody has ever been retired before they actually retire, right? So we want to make sure that we have a strategy in place to make sure that we can use all the assets that we worked hard to build up and then essentially distribute them in a way that is A, tax efficient, and B, addresses longevity risk or any risk management that may occur within that phase. So I appreciate you all taking the time out of your weekend to gather here today. Any questions? I'd be more than happy to answer anything that's on your guys' mind. Northwestern Mutual, yes. Say that again? I'll just wait for them. We're not a bank. Yeah, it's Northwestern Mutual started as a life insurance company in the 1800s. Yeah. Anything else? If not, oh yeah, go ahead.
So with the life insurance, right? I know you said employers give you like 3 times X. Would you reduce some of that from the employee side for the private, or would you try to match it? What would be your strategy for that?
That's a good question. So typically 1 to 3x is what we would call like complementary. There are plans in terms of your group coverage where you can opt in for like extra. So what we would say is if you have, let's say 3x on the high end, they're very generous. We would say keep that coverage, and then anything else that you would need in terms of debt, income replacement, and the remaining expenses, we would supplement that through individual private plans. So we can use that to complement, offset, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, we have to remember that the 300,000 isn't really 300,000, right? So we'd have to do the math there depending on what your life insurance need is to make sure that we get to that amount that you're comfortable with in your plan.
So what I'm getting at is that this is representing a company, correct? So how would I invest in this company or get to invest in this company or?
Yeah, so we would be your financial advisors. So here at Northwestern Mutual, we help when it comes to personal investments, insurance, and retirement planning. So we would help facilitate the investment of your investment portfolio. We would help you select the securities that you want to invest in, but you're not investing essentially in Northwestern Mutual because we're a private, not publicly traded company. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so your question was, how would you invest with us? So you wouldn't, okay, so my team and I, we would be your financial advisors, right? And we would help design an investment strategy that's tailored specifically to you based off of, again, risk tolerance, risk capacity, what you want the dollars to do for you. That's how we'll essentially select your investment strategy through different securities. So stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever it may be. And we would use one of 2 platforms. We would either serve as like brokerage, where we essentially like serve as order takers. So we would say, hey, here's a mutual fund that we would invest your dollars into. And we would track that performance together. Or we could serve on the advisory capacity, where we're actively managing funds, rebalancing, tax loss harvesting, doing all of those things for you. So one is going to be suitability. The other one is going to be held to a fiduciary standard. So suitability means, are these recommendations at the time that they were recommended suitable to your financial plan? Fiduciary is going to be a higher standard in the sense that my team would be legally and morally obligated to work in your best interest, right? So that's going to be the main difference, and how you would invest through us that'll be determinant of what your investment strategy would look like and how we would kind of hand select your investment selection. Yes. So depending on the platform that you take on, whether it's brokerage or advisory, brokerage is going to be more of a like commission based. So there's going to be a sales charge that comes with each transaction. So let's make the math easy. Let's say you're investing $100 a month into an index fund. Typically sales charges are about 5%, right? So let's say you invest 95, my team keeps $5. So that's how it would look. That's how it would work on the brokerage capacity. On the advisory capacity, there is an asset under management fee. So whereas brokerage is going to be transactional based or commission based, so every month you would kind of pay that 5%. Advisory is going to be more of an ongoing fee. So typically it's going to be about 1% of the assets that we manage, right? That 1% would be broken up on a quarterly basis. So let's call it 25 basis points every 3 months. So depending on the size of the account, you would qualify for breakpoints or what we would call discounts, right? That may lower the asset under management fee. So one is going to be ongoing, the other one is going to be per transaction. So depending on the platform that we would go through, that's essentially what would determine what the fee structure would look like. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on cryptocurrency?
Huh?
What are your thoughts on cryptocurrency?
What are my thoughts on cryptocurrency? Well, my team and I don't feel comfortable designing plans for our clients that are based off of essentially things that we cannot value or like put a value towards. So cryptocurrency, what are they called? NFTs. All of those things are basically based off of someone's opinion. And I don't want to base my client's financial plan off of the opinion of so-and-so on Reddit, right? Like I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure that my client's plans are built off of academic research, proven methodologies, science, right? I've always been like a numbers guy, a person who likes research and making sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. So when it comes to cryptocurrency and NFTs, I don't know how to value that. And if it's something that I can't value, like I wouldn't even include that in someone's financial plan. I have some clients who have cryptocurrency because they believe in it. And I told them straight up, like, great, I'm not accounting for that in your plan. Like, I'm not, if that goes well and it goes to the moon, great. Like, we're probably gonna take some of that and put it into a portfolio that's more diversified, right? Help fund these other goals. But I'm not gonna go and tell you, hey, you need to go buy Dogecoin because it's gonna go to the moon, right? Like, that's, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
So what about GameStop?
Well, GameStop is a perfect example of the risk of not diversifying your assets, right? So GameStop, anyone who simply owned GameStop as a stock, and for those of you that aren't familiar with, there's like what we would call like a short squeeze on GameStop. So essentially the stock rose because people were buying into it, and I don't know how it happened. Someone on Reddit was like, hey, these hedge fund managers, these money managers, they're raising the stock, they're pumping the price of the stock up. Let's sell, right? Let's sell the stock, or let's, what's it called? Use like short it. There you go. Yeah, let's short it so that they don't win as much as they think they're going to win. So the stock actually plummeted, right? Which is essentially illustrates the danger of not diversifying your assets, right? So having all your eggs in one basket, whether it's cryptocurrency, GameStop, whatever it may be, can be very detrimental to your plan. So the approach that my team and I take is, how can we get you from point A to point B, taking the appropriate amount of risk, right? If we don't have to take more risk than we need to, but we can still get you there, I feel like that's a win in our eyes, right? So we may not hit you a grand slam home run, but we'll hit you singles, doubles, an occasional triple, right? To get you to where you need to be safely. Yeah.
From diversifying your stocks. So say I had $250 that I wanted to invest, but I didn't want to buy Google stock, right? Just one of those. Is there strategies where I can split that up to own a certain percentage of a stock in multiple companies? Do you offer those type of strategies?
Yeah, so when it comes to diversification, like Brother Derek said earlier, one of the easiest ways would be like index funds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, right? ETFs, because typically those funds are going to consist of multiple individual stocks that exist within them, right? So again, it'll come down to what you want the dollars to do for you, right? So what I mean by that is, hey, if you tell me you want this money for retirement, potentially an aggressive growth fund, right, could be beneficial because we're not going to touch this money for 10, 15, 20 plus years, right? If you tell me, Carlos, I want to essentially buy a home in the next 5, 10 years, right? I would probably not encourage you to be as aggressive with that money because we want to make sure that we're preserving some of that capital. So potentially a more balanced fund could be a more appropriate asset allocation for you there. Now, depending again what your risk tolerance is, there's different ways that we can divvy that up for you, whether it's 50-50, right? Like 50% equity, 50% bonds or fixed income, 60% equities, 40% fixed income, right? It all comes down to really what your preference is, what your time horizon is, what you need the money to do for you. So that's essentially the process that we take our clients through when it comes to, hey, they tell us, hey, I do want to invest. So we ask them those questions. Hey, what do you want the money to do for you? Like, what is the purpose of these dollars, right? And it really just, each of these strategies, right, the 4 different areas will tie into each other, right? So, yeah. Go ahead.
I haven't heard credit score management or assistance. Is that covered under debt management in your strategies?
So when it comes to credit score, typically like good practice is what my team and I would call like paying off your cards in full. I've heard sometimes it's, hey, I want to leave like a little bit on there each month. However, what you need to remember is that that money that's left over is subject to the interest on that, right? Although you may be paying the minimums, you're still paying interest on the dollars that are left over. So I think a really good approach to kind of building good credit would be to continue with the minimum payments. However, it's going to be inefficient in the long run as those bills get larger, right? And you put more on the credit card. So good practice is once you've gotten out of credit card debt, stay out of it, right? So what I do right now is all my bills, I put them on my credit card, and then at the end of the month, whenever the credit card is due, it's paid off in full, right? Once it's paid off in full, we do the same thing over again. And that's something that helps build good credit because essentially you want to keep, if you do keep money in there, you want to make sure that it's less than, I believe, 30% of the limit that you're allowed, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But when you do leave money left in that account, it is subject to those interests that can accrue over time. So. Anything else? It would go, I feel like the only time it would go down is if either payments are late, we're not able to clear out that payment, or if it exceeds 30% of the limit in terms of what the credit limit is for your card, right? So let's just say you have $10,000, right? If the bills are amounting to be more than like $5,000 and it's left on that like statement that gets reported to the credit bureau, they might see that as, okay, he or she is borrowing more than they can kind of pay off, And that could be something that could trigger, like, I guess, reductions in credit score, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the funny thing about like credit and debt. It's that it's like they basically like they basically like they say, hey, if we're really going to give you a better credit score if you can prove to us that you don't need to borrow the money. Like that's kind of what it is, right? It's like, yeah. All right. If you have any like individual questions that you would prefer not to ask in front of everyone, I'll stick around for a couple minutes afterwards, and we can kind of have some conversations there. But I appreciate you again all taking the time to be here this morning. I don't take any of you for granted, so thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Again, thank you very much for coming out. One more time, let's give a round of applause to our speakers, Brother Derek Carbon and Brother Carlos Jr. And to everyone, thank you very much. Again, as what Brother Carlos said, if you have any more questions, you can come up to him and ask your questions to him or to Brother Derek. And again, on behalf of everybody of the church, we would like to thank all of you for coming out this day and have this wonderful financial seminar. Lord willing, I know there's a lot of things going on in your mind, a lot of questions. So Lord willing, we'll be having part two, right, Brother Carlos? Part two, yep. Yep, Brother Derek? All right. All right, so once again, thank you very much. And before we go, shall we ask Brother Carlos Sr. for our closing prayer, sir?
Thank you again. Let's all pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this beautiful opportunity that you gave to us to be together again, Father, in this building. And at this time, to be learning more about how to be prepared for our future days on this earth, Father. And we pray that you give to us the wisdom and the knowledge to bring in practice all this seminar that we heard this morning. Father, thank you. And we pray that you continue blessing us, Father, that we be continue thinking in you, Father, thanking you for all the things that you are providing and giving to us, Father. Thank you for this great teaching at this time, Father. Thank you so much, and our prayer is always in the holy name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.